Hello my beautiful watchers and welcome back to Lost in Adaptation, a final reminder that I am not the kind of Dom you're thinking of, it's just my name. So, 50 Shades Darker. Let's just get this over with so I can go back to my life. As I mentioned in my Lost in Adaptation for 50 Shades of Grey, despite the fact that the film was way more loyal to its book than your average big screen adaptation, the author, E.L. James, apparently felt the director, Sam Taylor Johnson, was failing to make the film live up to her vision and insisted on being given complete creative control over 50 Shades Darker. The IMDb page for this film's director, James Foley, seems to mostly consist of doing music videos for Madonna in the 80s and directing odd episodes of various TV shows from then on, so one can only assume he was selected to direct because he possessed the important skill of being willing to bend over and be E.L. James's biatch. That said, spoiler warning for the rest of the episode, but when I sat down to watch this film, I made a prediction. I said, this film is going to be just like all the misleading synopses I read about this book that left out almost all of what actually happened in it, i.e. chapter after chapter after chapter of unpleasant fighting and fucking, and just concentrated on the semi-interesting stuff that came and went really quickly every now and again, and I guess you should slap some lipstick on me and call me Mystic Meg because I was bang on the money. That Mystic Meg reference was a very British 90s kid thing, so don't worry if you didn't get it. My thoughts on the book, just as a book, and a horrifically irresponsible attempt to normalise and romanticize abusive relationships, was not only too long to fit into the beginning of this episode, it was too long to fit into a single episode of its own, so feel free to check out that two-parter if you haven't already. As for my thoughts on the film, all the pop songs in the world are in this film. I mean, I can't play them for you now because of copyright, but they are everywhere. The chemistry between the two leads is once again so bad it's genuinely laughable, but, you know, laughable in a really awkward way. It's like watching cousins make out, it's so uncomfortable in places. The film tries to compensate for this lack by going all out with the soundtrack during the sex scenes. Again, sorry I can't show you this here because of copyright, but it really is hilarious. They usually pick something with quite a strong bass, and they do things like time the music drops to the moment of penetration like it's the world's most sexual AMV. This film is definitely targeted towards horny women, not horny men. I'm not saying that as a criticism, it's just a statement of fact. While Anna's boobs do get some decent screen time, they're presented almost entirely matter-of-factly. The only time Anna's body is lingered on, it's to facilitate showcasing some sexy underwear. Grey's chiseled torso and butt, on the other hand, are presented with an almost religious reverence by the cinematography and soundtrack whenever they're on screen. Continuity is not this film's friend. The most interesting inconsistency is the ton of expensive-looking lingerie that apparently got absorbed into Anna's body during the party. Just like the last adaptation, this film tries to be clever by showing the text exchanges between Grey and Anna hovering on the screen. However, the problem of this being kind of unoriginal and inconsistent throughout the film also makes a second appearance, I'm afraid. The framing in this film is just bizarre. I don't think I've seen anything quite this intentionally unusual since Battlefield Earth. I wouldn't even say it's trying to be innovative, it's just off-putting. My girlfriend is of the belief that the makeup artist for this film needs to be fired or at least punched in the face, as he apparently decided Anna needed to be smothered in lipstick in almost every shot of the film. Quick heads up, I'm going to be working on the assumption that you've already watched my synopsis video on the plot of this book, so I don't have to explain the context of everything as it comes up. If you haven't yet, there's the thing. Okay, let's talk adaptation. Grey sending the world's most over-the-top bouquet of flowers to Anna as step 1 of his 3-step plan to get her back. Steps 2 and 3 of the plan, dragging her into a dark alleyway and making a bunch of promises he has no intention of keeping, are also in the film. Anna's best friend and roommate Kate being away on holiday with Christian's little brother Elliot, so she has no one to talk to about all the shit he's putting her through. By the way, Kate and Elliot's relationship, while not as insanely rushed as Anna and Grey's because they're not engaged by the end, is still pretty damn rushed when you think about it, seeing as they've been dating less than a month but they're already going on a weeks-long vacation together abroad. While Anna's lack of car is not directly addressed like in the book, they took the time to include a shot of her on the bus, so it is established. Jose filling his photo exhibit with way too much Anna without asking if that was okay with her first, inclining Grey to buy them all so he could remain her primary stalker. Grey ordering for both of them at the restaurant without checking to see what Anna actually wanted. Former sub and current crazy person with her bleeding wrists and disheveled look running up to Anna on the street for a closer look at her. Grey not liking being touched on certain parts of his his body and circling said areas with lipstick because apparently just pointing to them wasn't clear enough. The disagreement in regards to the $24,000 Gray wanted her to have, her tearing up the check and him wiring the money instead, revealing he mysteriously knows her bank account number. Gray attempting to take Anna for a haircut at the same salon that he takes all his subs to, which also happens to be co-owned by his ex. Anna not only being pissed about it, but having to explain to him why that's such a dick move. Gray eventually admitting he had some private investigators make an in-depth dossier on Anna when he was trying to make her his sub. Gray dishing out the goss on Subby Crazy Pants, the girl stalking her. Slipping the silver balls into her vagina for the masquerade party run by Gray's adopted parents, there also being no logical reason for it to be a masquerade aside from E.L. James thinking they're sexy. Gray's much more pleasant little sister Mia befriending Anna, sneaking off from the party to his childhood room for a quick spank and fuck. Anna noticing the photo of Gray's biological mother. Anna having a low-key confrontation with Gray's ex Eleanor. Cuckoo for submissive puffs defacing Anna's car, prompting Gray to take her into hiding temporarily. Gray and Anna having fun on his big-ass custom yacht named after his adopted mother Grace. Anna sneaking into the playroom to have a look at some of the sex toys in there, Gray surprising her, her suggesting they try out some of the toys, resulting in his housekeeper Mrs. Jones seeing him carrying her and some leg restraints in the direction of the bedroom. Anna's boss Jack Hyde telling her that she's coming with him to a conference in New York. Gray attempting to forbid her from going. Jack Hyde showing his true colours and trying to force himself on Anna, earning a knee to the groin. Gray getting Hyde fired with a single phone call. Against all conceivable logic, Anna getting asked to fill Hyde's former position at the company. Gray sexually exciting Anna with his fingers in a crowded elevator. Making a sex bet on a game of pool and spending way too much time on said game of pool before finally finishing it and fucking on the table. Oh God, why did that have to be something they stayed loyal to? Heat-packing sub-girl ambushing Anna in her apartment, Gray doming her into surrender, then banishing Anna while stroking her hair, something that seems to confirm to her that Gray really does need his lovers to be subs for him to be happy. Gray freaking out because Anna wants a few days away from him and assuming the sub position himself. Gray proposing to Anna and her buying a keyring in order to stealthily say yes without him knowing immediately. Gray's helicopter going down due to sabotage, but being absolutely fine, his family only believing him lost because he didn't bother to call ahead to tell them this. Gray finding out that Anna has already said yes to his proposal, announcing it at his birthday party, telling Eleanor that she taught him how to fuck but Anna taught him how to love, and proposing properly in a room full of flowers. And Jack Hyde swearing sequel bait revenge in the shadows outside the house. The uncomfortable ownership vibe that Gray gives off in regards to Anna is, unfortunately, carried over into the film. It's not as extreme as it was in the book, but he still says "you're mine" before and after they get back together, and refers to men talking to Anna as them wanting what's his. To my eternal sorrow, some of the worst lines from the book managed to worm their way into the film's dialogue as well.
But you need all those things.
I need you more. I'm the boyfriend. I'm the boss. I don't know whether to worship at your feet or spank you.
On the whole, Gray definitely comes off as much less of a terrible person in the film. Don't get me wrong, he's still a total wanker, but if I was in a room with both versions of him and held a gun with only one bullet in it, I would use it on book Christian Grey without hesitation. The single biggest factor in this is the omission of many of the horrible fights he causes with Anna due to his inability to treat her as a human being or stop doing exactly what he wants regardless of her feelings in any given situation. However, that's obviously something to discuss in the final section of the review. The second biggest factor is not so much a change in what he says, but the tone in which he says it. When Book Grey said things like, "I don't know whether to worship at your feet or spank you," it was made pretty clear that he was fighting back genuine rage at her for defying him and would greatly prefer the latter option. James Dornan delivered that line with an air of amusement and grudging respect. The blatant sexual assault scene that angered me so much in the book is made significantly less sexually assaulty in the film. Grey still throws her up against the wall, but there's a good 5-second pause before they both go in for the kiss this time. Though I guess we'll never know if he would have done it anyway if she hadn't decided to participate willingly. He even lets Anna pay for a meal with a smile on his face. Whew. Book Grey would have bought that whole cafe and burnt it to the ground rather than let her do that. I am not exaggerating. Him paying for everything was so tied into his perception of his masculinity, it was horrifying. The editing of the film itself also partakes in these tonal changes in regards to him. Anna asking how he knows her bank info is played almost for laughs, cutting away before he gives her an answer to them having a good time in a cafe and not addressing the file he has on her until later after the salon fiasco. However, there were some occasions where the film's changes has actually made him seem worse than before, hard to believe though that is. I mentioned in the synopsis that Gray used the excuse that he was doing it for her safety to justify doing all manner of controlling things to Anna, including when he picked her up in public and carried her to his car, then back to his penthouse. He doesn't quite carry her in the film, just threatens to. However, he lacks his former excuse now because there's no phone call immediately before it where he finds out exactly who it is who's following Anna. He apparently knew even before he took her out to the salon. His attempt to kidnap her in this context has nothing to do with a bout of overprotectiveness. It's just because she didn't want to come with him and he was annoyed that she was upset about Eleanor. Another subtle change that makes Gray look worse in the film is Gray ended it with Miss Bonkers and not vice versa. In the book, she broke it off with him to pursue a more romantic relationship with someone else. In the film, she apparently tried to get too romantic with him, so he dumped her. Much like Gray, and much like the first movie, there's a huge improvement in the character of Anastasia in this film. Not enough to make her a good role model or likable in any way, shape or form, but again, I would take the Dakota Johnson version of her over her book counterpart any day of the week. She has, perhaps not a fully formed, but at least a semblance of a backbone this time around. That she even considers throwing away the flowers is new, and even better, she actually overrules Gray's attempts to order for her at the restaurant during their reunification negotiations. In that same scene in the book, Anna briefly whined that maybe she didn't want steak, then meekly accepted it anyway. When reading the conversation between her and Gray about the surprise trip to New York and seeing him say, "The answer is no," over and over again, I found myself muttering, "She wasn't asking, she wasn't asking, she wasn't asking," under my breath, and what do you know, that's exactly what Anna says to him in the film. Film Anna is also less frustratingly naive and slow on the uptake. She figures out the woman in the old photo is Gray's mother much quicker, and puts two and two together in regards to his Oedipus complex without him having to spell it out for her. She even eventually calls him out on his habit of treating her like his property. Like I said, she's sure as fuck still a wet paper towel of a person for not immediately leaving this needy, controlling, abusive arsehole, but it's just enough to make her more bearable as a character. Oh, and BTW, her line, "Sex is not gonna fix this right now, are you insane?" invoked a slightly deranged burst of laughter from me, seeing as that's exactly how Gray fixed every problem in the book with no exceptions. In the film, both Eleanor and Sad Sub Supreme tell Anna that she isn't good enough for Gray and he needs to dom people to truly love them. This has the dual useful effects of conveying Anna's internal concern about this to the audience and giving her more of a reason for thinking it might be true, unlike the book in which it was just wanton paranoia on her part. Jose acknowledges that he didn't ask Anna's permission to sell her image and admits he knew full well that she would have said no if he had. Combine that with the photos being shots she clearly posed for and not candid snaps, and I am 90% sure this officially takes his actions way into illegal territory. Gray appears to have decided to ambush Anna at the photo exhibit instead of worming his way back into her life by offering her a lift to it. Wait, how did she get there in the film then? I guess it's not important. What is we're spared his judgmental comments about how much weight she'd lost since the breakup, which is less rage-inducing and also less confusing, because we're not left wondering how much weight could she possibly have lost in 3 fucking days. Gray looks a bit more disheveled in the film. In the book, Anna notes with some annoyance that he appears immaculate while she looks like a total mess after their time apart. The revelation that Gray's mother was a crack whore was not something that he shared with Anna while she was asleep in the book version of 50 Shades of Grey, so Gray bringing it on her now is new. Anna appears to have received an iPhone instead of an iPad this time, and the absence of her squeeing about what an amazing product it is most appreciated. In the film, Anna is the one who decides to take it slowly and not jump right back into bed instead of the no sex thing being an early power play by Gray. With this change, the sensual touching during the cooking seems like somewhat mixed messages on her part. The term kinky fuckery is something Anna came up with instead of Gray now. It's still bloody stupid either way though. In the film, Anna feels the full effects of the balls in her vagina when she sits down at the masquerade, as opposed to in the car like in the book, raising the question as to why she hadn't felt them in the car. Did Gray have one of those standing cars I've heard so much about? I hear they're really good for your posture. To facilitate a large chunk of the book being cut out, when they want to hide from subby-dubby fruitcake, Gray takes Anna to his yacht to spend the night instead of a hotel, something that wasn't due to happen until quite a few chapters later. It is a testament to how inconsequential and pointless those intervening chapters were that the story isn't affected by their loss at all. There's a new scene in the film where Anna is very taken with the seafront mansion, and Gray makes a joke about a crazy old widow who lives there, which, while not funny by normal human standards, was 100% more amusing than anything he'd ever said in the book. This scene appears to go absolutely nowhere in the film, so I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that Gray buys it in the sequel for them to live in. In the original order of events, Hyde invited Anna to go to New York with him before he pulled his complete 180 in personality, and she was actually really excited about the idea of going. In retrospect, the fact that Gray was correct that Hyde was probably planning something nasty nasty for Anna in that hotel helps a little, but I maintain he should have shown her some basic human respect and explicitly told her that instead of making vague hints about him and flat out forbidding her to go on the trip without explanation. Even though she still concedes on the issue like always, Anna and Gray discussing the trip to New York like adults is probably the least faithful part of this whole adaptation. As I mentioned in episodes past, Gray just used his clout as the soon-to-be owner of the company to cancel the whole thing, and of course they just fuck later when Anna gets upset about it. I do wonder if the shift from emails to messaging was something the filmmakers did without consulting James, or if someone actually had to sit her down and explain to her how the younger people actually communicate these days. Gosh, I hope it was the latter. Gray's offer to support Anna financially seems better intentioned in the film, as he only brings it up when she thinks she might have lost her job, instead of in the book where he, on multiple occasions, tried to talk her into quitting her perfectly good job so she could be at his beck and call in his apartment whenever he got done bringing home the big bucks. In keeping with the not good but at least better than the book theme of this film, the way that Anna gets Jack Hyde's former job is slightly more believable in this version of events. As opposed to the company deciding she should fill in for him based on some super work skills she had apparently shown despite them not having been mentioned in the book until then, she was just asked to fill in for one meeting, then happened to impress the apparently very eccentric CEO with her basic knowledge of marketing, so he gave her the job on a whim. I will admit that in this context there is a very, very small chance that it wasn't Gray pulling strings like he claimed. The scene where Gray powers up his doming laser vision to save Anna from Captain Submanator is a little different to the book, firstly because Anna seems to be in a lot more danger now. Subby McSubsub never really pointed the gun at her originally and seemed only half aware that she was holding it at all, as opposed to her firing off a round to show she really does want Anna 6 feet under. Secondly, because the effect that Gray has on her was super instantaneous in the book. He walked in, locked eyes with her, and bam, she dropped that gun like it didn't exist anymore and was down on the floor in a hot second. There was no hesitation like in the film is what I'm saying. I also have to admit I was slightly disappointed that Sobby Subchan had more emotion in her voice than was described in the book, so she didn't sound anything like Igor. In a similar change in tone, Gray assuming the submissive position seems like less of an out-of-control act of panic like in the book, and more of a deliberate act, raising some suspicion, for me at least, in regards to its authenticity. He has that look in his eye, that's all I'm saying. What can I do to make sure she doesn't leave and get some time to think? Aha! I'll appear vulnerable. Ah, Chrissy boy, you're a damn genius. Gray's proposal is moved away from this scene to a few hours later, i.e. in the middle of the night. Anna assumes he might be only half awake, but he confirms it the next morning as well. This weakens the connection between the proposal and Gray's panic about the idea of Anna womaning up and leaving him, making their engagement not entirely about Gray's super needy need for proof that she wasn't going to dump him again, like, unfortunately, it 100% was in the book. The helicopter crash not only takes place on screen, it's also a lot more dramatic than described in the book. It's not really even a crash there, he just had to land it really fast. There's not a single scratch on him. I'm not an aeronautical engineer, but I'm pretty sure if you lose both engines on a helicopter, you don't soar downwards slowly like an aeroplane, you just drop like a stone, but whatever, it's the only interesting 20 seconds of the entire movie, so I guess I shouldn't complain. Plus, it lets me fantasize for just a few glorious moments that Gray really was dead. The film tries to get around some of the awkwardness of the fact that Anna and Gray are engaged after less than a month of dating on-off by adding in a scene of Anna's mum being overwhelmingly happy about it and saying that Anna has always been the kind of person who's known exactly what she wants and exactly what's best for her. Wow, this woman does not know her daughter at all. That is legit depressing. In fact, everyone seems super okay with this in the film. The novel, while completely out of touch with reality in most ways, did at least include some token moments of Anna's friends and family commenting that this was very fast and very sudden and trying to find out if this really was what she wanted. FYI, Anna's answer in the book was always, "Yes, I love him." Oh, Anna, you fucking moron. Being in love is not the only requirement to be ready to be married. Only a child would think that. Hyde sneaking into the Gray household during a masquerade to take a photo of a family picture and print it out so he could be ready to dramatically burn Christian's face in the event of him being fired because of him is new to the film and, as it sounds, weird and pointless.
Hey Jack, why do you have a room full of other people's family photos? Oh, it's in case any of them cross me someday. I want to be ready to act out some really unsubtle imagery at a moment's notice. I've got this whole thing with a cigarette planned out. It's going to be badass.
As I've mentioned quite a few times now, the vast majority of this book was Gray doing something just terrible, them arguing about it, then having sex, inevitably resulting in Anna giving up on the argument and Gray getting exactly what he wants. They disposed of so much of this. Oh, you think there's still quite a lot of arguing in the film? Nothing compared to the book, trust me. The film even went as far as to cut and paste 3 scenes separated in the book by several chapters and multiple arguments so they played back to back, creating the illusion that these two could go a couple of hours without snarling at each other. No under-the-table handjob at the masquerade ball. Good for you, film. Dr. Flynn, Gray's unprofessional psychiatrist, has been omitted entirely. No bidding war on Anna's first dance and no heart-to-heart with her to help her understand Gray's particular brand of crazy. As I mentioned in the review video, I believe his main purpose in the story was to help E.L. James backpedal on her deep and quite offensive misunderstanding of what sadism is. Unless I'm remembering it wrong, the film didn't explicitly describe it as a mental disorder like the book did, so they didn't need Flynn to retcon it. His absence does make the keyring thing a little more pointless though. Anna originally did that so she could prove to Gray that she was going to say yes regardless of what Flynn told her when they were alone together. Now it just seems like a really cheesy way of accepting a proposal. They also skipped the confusing incident where E.L. James showed she really didn't understand how the contraceptive pill works because she wrote about a doctor freaking out and assuming Anna must be automatically pregnant because she didn't take it for 3 days. Contraception in general is never really addressed in this film, which I think might have been a mistake considering what I know about the events of the last book of the trilogy. All I can say for now though is they cut out all the times that Gray stopped to put on a condom before all the sex scenes while loudly griping about how much he hates them, and yes, that's just as much of a mood killer as it sounds. Great work, James. There's a sex scene left out near the end of the story where Anna actually uses the nipple clamps that Gray showed her. I only really bring it up because it amused me no end that Anna said the sensation made her nipples sing.
Rule Britannia, Britannia rules the waves. Britons never, never, never shall be slaves.
Oh gods, no. Oh, I am so sorry. I took it too far. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Gray doesn't use the term running to describe her breaking up with him like he does in the book. I've discussed why I found that such a disgusting manipulative tactic. They quietly skipped over Gray venting his fears and frustrations by berating Anna right after the attempted rape on her. Not surprising really, that really was one of Gray's lowest moments in the book. Gray spanked Anna with a ruler before fucking her on the pool table. Later, Anna came back into the room and practiced hitting herself with it, chastising herself for not being able to take a bit more pain for her man, and causing me yet another minor brain aneurysm. Gray doesn't transfer $50,000 into Anna's account for no apparent reason, making her feel like a prostitute in the film, which is nice. Kate's younger brother Ethan, who, as I mentioned in the synopsis video, kind of turned up, was there for a bit, and then left, was unsurprisingly not in the film. The only partially interesting thing of note in regards to him is Gray's younger sister Mia decided she wanted to date him, but he turned her down because the group was already getting too incestuous, what with his friend and his sister dating her brothers. Anna only tries to get and is denied space from Gray once in the film. The other 2 or 3 times that this happened are cut out. The mansion that Gray bought and showed Anna around to try to bribe her into saying yes to his proposal is absent in the film. As I mentioned before, I suspect this will be replaced with him buying the house on the seafront they talked about on the boat. The Eleanor getting blackmailed plot that went all kinds of nowhere in the book is also quietly skipped over for obvious reasons. The 2 almost, but not really, I love yous that Anna got out of Gray before the actual one are also missing in the film, making Anna seem less desperate for affection. One of the many fights the film skipped over was the one right before Gray went missing in his helicopter. Anna felt especially guilty that anger had been their potential last exchange. I'm not sure why. If anything ever does happen to him, the odds are good that it will be right after a fight, as that's like 90% of the relationship. No ice cream in the vagina, praise the gods, though they did manage to slip in the cringeworthy vanilla jokes, oh joy. The film also left out Anna's stepdad Ray entirely, which is kind of a shame because he is the only person in the world she doesn't have a terrible relationship with. He was originally the first person that Anna spoke to about her engagement, and his reaction wasn't, "Yay, that's great, you always make good decisions, don't listen to the haters who say you shouldn't get married after less than a month," like her mother's was. Kate finding the email printout detailing some of the sex contract, freaking out, but then being immediately placated is also omitted. I mean, I would have too. How the hell would you even go about showing that in a way that wasn't ridiculous?
Is it true, Anthony? Did you kill those men? Did you kill Joey's son?
No.
Oh. Okay.
The Dom's final thoughts. I feel like I'm going mad here. This was the film that E.L. James had more control over. It's significantly less book loyal than the first one in both the details and the overall tone. It's still pretty loyal by what I consider to be the usual film adaptation standards, but it really is a very slimmed down and highlights version of the story. That Anna still said yes to Gray's proposal in the book after chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter of mindless fighting is excruciatingly painful. Here, it's just a run-of-the-mill terrible decision made by someone who's clearly very bad at making life choices. The fact alone that, even though Gray always still got what he wanted in the end, not all of their arguments were resolved through sex is enough to make me 100% sure that the film is preferable to the book. But of course, Lost in Adaptation is not supposed to be about which is better, it's about how well films tie into the books they're based on, and that question has really got me flummoxed here. Unfortunately for me, the parts of the book they kept were almost obsessively loyal, but they cut out so much garbage it's virtually a different story overall. The film is an improvement to the point where it really doesn't reflect the book anymore. You could even say it doesn't stick to E.L. James's vision. A final reminder that improvement does not equate good here, it's still a fucking awful film. Perhaps I misjudged Foley. Maybe the skill set he was chosen for was his ability to manipulate the inflated ego of E.L. James into thinking they were being more loyal to her book, while actually steering away from it just as much, if not more, than the first movie. Just a thought. Hello again, my beautiful watchers. Ooh, actually, let's do this as a parody, hang on. Hi there. We've had a lot of fun here tonight, but I wanted to quickly address something before we finally part ways with this horrible book series for another year. Over the last few videos, I've shown a lot of exasperation and annoyance at the character of Anastasia for missing all the red flags constantly waving in her face throughout the books, and I felt I should probably make it clear that I feel this because Anna is a work of fiction. Her inability to see what appears to be obvious is either intentional on the part of the author or something she really should have known better about and had the power to change. However, importantly, it is not a reflection of my feelings towards people in real life who end up in, or unable to get out of, abusive relationships because they can't see the signs, because I am painfully aware that there is a huge difference between being able to see a relationship is unhealthy when you're an impartial observer, and being able to see it when you're actually the one in it. It's like the difference between being a colonel in the heat of battle and a general looking at a map. Sometimes there's just too much going on around you for you to be able to take a step back and see the big picture. When you're actually in the thick of it, with the manipulation and the gaslighting and the guilt trips and the fear and the uncertainty, it's very, very easy to miss what seems obvious to others. That's exactly why emotionally abusive people do those things. I guess what I really want to say is, if you missed red flags in the past, you are not stupid, and if you see someone else missing them, there's nothing wrong with them. That's why you mustn't be angry at loved ones for not seeing these signs. Be honest with them, but not angry. The advice I'd like to end on is, please remember that if you see something terribly wrong with a relationship, don't keep it to yourself for fear of upsetting your loved one, and if someone tells you there is something wrong with your relationship but you don't see it, please at least consider what they are trying to tell you. Thank you. The film even went as far as to cut and paste 3 scenes separated in the book by several chapters and multiple arguments so they played back to back, creating the illusion that these two could go a couple of hours without snarling at each other.
Damn it, woman, why do you always have to be so damn difficult all the time?
I really think we have to talk about your phobia of being touched.
No!
You know, you really don't have to be so hard on Eleanor. She really is quite a wonderful person once you get to know her. You know, I would love it if you would stop telling me what to do for 5 seconds and actually listen to me every now and again.
I might if you actually did what you were told for once, because the two of us are not going to work if you keep defying me. Damn it, woman, why do you always have to be
quite a wonderful person
all the time?
I really think I love you,
because the two of us are quite a wonderful person all the time.